8 days into this World Cup, and Group D has already become one of the strangest stories in the tournament. This was supposed to be one of the more straightforward groups in the entire draw. The United States as co-hosts, given the benefit of home support and a manageable path. Turkey as the dangerous European side lurking in the fourth pot, expected to be the only team capable of seriously challenging the Americans for top spot. Australia and Paraguay, by most projections, fighting it out for scraps. 8 days later, none of that has held up. The United States walked in as hosts, as favorites, and as a team with almost no history of winning anything at a World Cup. And in their opening match, they didn't just win. They dismantled Paraguay 4-1 in front of a sold-out crowd in Los Angeles, in what many are already calling one of the best performances in USMNT history. But that's not even the most surprising headline from this group. Australia, ranked 26th in the world, given almost no chance by anyone outside their own camp, went to Vancouver and beat Turkey. Not narrowly, not on penalties, 2-0 with a clean sheet against a team that was supposed to be the most dangerous side in this entire group. Turkey arrived with Arda Güler, Kenan Yıldız, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, a generation of attacking talent that European clubs have been fighting over for years. And they lost to a team that played 28% possession and didn't seem to mind at all. Tonight, both results get tested again. The United States face Australia in Seattle. Turkey face Paraguay in San Francisco, knowing that anything less than a win likely ends their World Cup before it really started. 2 matches, on the same day, both carrying enough weight to define this entire group before the final round of fixtures even begins. This is the story of Group D, and why nobody saw any of this coming. Let's start with what actually happened in Los Angeles, because the scoreline alone doesn't tell the full story. Paraguay had reached the round of 16 in 2010. They came in as the more experienced side in major tournaments, the team most pundits expected to make life difficult for the hosts. Instead, the United States scored within 7 minutes. A cross from Weston McKennie forced an own goal from Paraguay's own midfielder. By the 30th minute, Folarin Balogun had doubled the lead. Before halftime, Balogun had his second, completing the brace and putting the United States 3-0 up against a team many considered a genuine threat to escape this group. Christian Pulisic was directly involved in the early pressure that forced the game open, despite not even wearing the captain's armband. Gio Reyna added a fourth in stoppage time, finishing off a flowing move with a first-time strike. Paraguay's only goal came too late to matter. The final score, 4-1, sent an unmistakable message, not just to the rest of Group D but to the rest of the tournament. This is being called one of the most complete attacking performances in USMNT World Cup history. Not one of the best in a tight format. The best, full stop. According to a growing number of voices inside American soccer media, it's worth remembering how rarely this team has produced a performance like this on this stage. The United States has won exactly 1 World Cup knockout match in its entire history, a 4-1 demolition of a team that had reached the round of 16 just 16 years earlier. Isn't just a good result. It's the kind of statement that changes how the rest of the tournament views this roster entirely. But complete attacking performances against an off-color Paraguay don't guarantee anything when the opponent changes. Now contrast that with what happened in Vancouver less than 24 hours later. Turkey came into this World Cup as Group D's most talented roster on paper, and almost nobody disputed it. Arda Güler, fresh off a breakout season, was supposed to be the centerpiece. Kenan Yıldız, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, Barış Alper Yılmaz, attacking talent at genuinely elite European clubs. The kind of roster that, in theory, should overwhelm a team like Australia. Instead, Australia sat in a deep 5-4-1 defensive block, conceded the ball almost entirely, finishing the match with just 28% possession, and methodically picked Turkey apart on the counter. Nestori Irankunda, a 20-year-old playing in just his second senior tournament, opened the scoring in the 27th minute. Connor Metcalf doubled it in the 75th, driving into space and finishing from the edge of the box with a finish that gave Turkey's goalkeeper no chance. Turkey had the ball. Turkey had the individual quality. Turkey lost 2-0 and didn't manage to find the back of the net even once. This is the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath all the pre-tournament hype. Individual talent without defensive structure can be made to look completely toothless by a team that knows exactly what it wants to do without the ball. Australia didn't need possession. They needed organization. And they had far more of that than Turkey did. Think about what that result actually represents. This wasn't Turkey getting unlucky against a slightly weaker opponent. This was a team built around some of the most sought-after attacking talent in European football, being made to look completely toothless by a side that spent most of the match defending in their own half. Turkey managed barely any meaningful chances of note across the full 90 minutes. For a roster with this much individual quality, that's not bad luck. That's a real structural problem. So here's where Group D stands heading into tonight. The United States lead on goal difference, level on points with Australia. Turkey and Paraguay sit at the bottom, both on 0, both facing a match that is functionally a must-win. Tonight in Seattle, the United States face Australia in a match that will very likely decide who tops this group heading into the final round of fixtures. Win, and the Americans all but secure a top 2 finish with a game to spare. Lose, or even draw, and suddenly the group is wide open heading into the final round against Turkey. At the same time, in San Francisco, Turkey face a must-win match of their own against Paraguay. A loss here, and a team that arrived with some of the most exciting attacking talent in the entire tournament could be on the brink of an embarrassingly early exit, eliminated not by a heavyweight, but by the accumulated weight of 2 matches nobody expected them to struggle in. Paraguay, for their part, are not without hope. A 4-1 defeat doesn't necessarily reflect their full quality, and a side that reached the World Cup quarterfinals as recently as 2010 will fancy their chances of causing an upset against a Turkish team that looked uncertain and disjointed in their first outing. This is what makes the expanded 48-team format so unforgiving. There is no margin left for a slow start. A single bad night in the opening round can put even a talented, well-fancied team one bad result away from disaster. Compare that to past tournaments, where a 32-team format gave teams slightly more room to recover from an opening setback. That cushion barely exists anymore. With more teams competing for fewer truly comfortable paths through the group stage, every match now carries the weight of 2. If there's one player who deserves more attention heading into tonight, it's Folarin Balogun. 2 goals against Paraguay weren't a fluke finish or a lucky bounce. They were the product of genuine movement, genuine composure in the box, and a striker who looks completely comfortable carrying the attacking weight of a host nation under enormous pressure. If the United States are going to top this group, Balogun's finishing will likely be the difference. On the Australian side, Connor Metcalf's performance against Turkey deserves just as much attention. A midfielder who scored the goal that effectively ended the contest, driving from deep into space that a supposedly superior midfield simply failed to close down. If Australia want to beat the United States tonight, doing the same thing, exploiting the space behind an attacking, forward-thinking American midfield, is almost certainly the blueprint. And then there's Arda Güler. Turkey's most talked-about player heading into this tournament delivered almost nothing of note against Australia. Tonight against Paraguay isn't just a must-win match for his team, it's close to a referendum on whether Turkey's golden generation is actually ready for this stage, or whether the gap between domestic dominance and World Cup pressure is bigger than anyone wanted to admit. These 3 players represent 3 completely different stories. One striker proving he belongs on the biggest stage, one midfielder exposing a flaw nobody expected to matter this much, and one generational talent whose tournament and reputation now hinges on a single match against a team many assumed Turkey would beat comfortably. Let's talk about what's actually at stake tonight, beyond just 3 points. If the United States beat Australia, they go to 6 points from 2 matches, an almost insurmountable lead heading into their final group game against Turkey. The pressure shifts entirely away from the hosts and onto everyone else in this group. If Australia win instead, the picture flips completely. Suddenly it's Australia sitting at 6 points, the US on 3, and the tournament hosts facing a final group match against a talented Turkish side that would by then be fighting for its World Cup life. And whatever happens in Seattle, the result in San Francisco matters just as much. If Turkey beat Paraguay, this group stays exactly as unpredictable as it's been from day one. 4 teams still mathematically alive heading into the final round. If Turkey lose or draw, their World Cup could effectively already be over, regardless of what happens against the United States in the final match. There is no safe result left in this group. Every match from here decides something significant. Even a draw tonight in Seattle would scramble the picture in its own way, leaving both the United States and Australia needing something from their final matches and turning the last round of Group D fixtures into genuine knockout football before the actual knockout stage even begins. It's worth pausing on just how unusual this group has become. Pre-tournament, almost every preview had this group settling into a predictable order. The United States and Turkey finishing in the top two, with Australia and Paraguay fighting for scraps. One pre-tournament breakdown described it as a group where the US and Turkey were the slight favorites to secure the automatic qualification spots. 8 days later, that order has been completely inverted. The two teams given the least credit before kickoff, the United States, despite home advantage, given a fairly muted historical precedent, and Australia, written off by almost everyone, are exactly the two teams sitting on top. This is precisely the kind of group stage chaos that the expanded 48-team format was always going to produce eventually. More teams means more unpredictability, and Group D might be the clearest example of that anywhere in this tournament so far. It also says something about the danger of judging a World Cup roster purely on the names printed on the team sheet. Turkey's attacking talent is real. Nobody is disputing that Güler, Yıldız, and Çalhanoğlu are genuinely excellent footballers at club level, but a World Cup doesn't reward talent in isolation. It rewards the team that solves the specific problem in front of them on a given night. Australia solved theirs. Turkey didn't. The lesson extends beyond this group too. Tournaments are won and lost in these exact moments, not always in the final, not always in a dramatic penalty shootout, but in a quiet Saturday afternoon match in Vancouver, where a supposedly inferior side simply executed its plan better than a more talented opponent executed theirs. So what actually happens tonight? The United States are favorites against Australia, and deservedly so on the basis of their opening performance. But Australia have already shown, against a team with significantly more individual talent, that they know exactly how to frustrate an attacking opponent and punish mistakes on the counter. If the US press too aggressively and get caught in transition, tonight could look very different from the rout in Los Angeles. Turkey, meanwhile, cannot afford anything less than a win against Paraguay. Anything else, and the most talked-about roster in this group heading into the tournament could be staring at an early elimination that nobody predicted in May. By the end of tonight, Group D will look completely different from how it looks right now. One team could be functionally through, another could be functionally out. And the team that looked the most dangerous on paper before a ball was even kicked might already be running out of time to prove it. There's also a tactical subplot worth watching closely in Seattle. The United States press high and commit numbers forward when they're in possession, exactly the kind of approach that left space behind Turkey's midfield against Australia. If Australia can replicate that same defensive discipline against the hosts, in front of what will likely be an electric pro-American crowd, the pressure of expectation might end up working against the United States rather than for them. Group D was supposed to be one of the more predictable stories of this World Cup. Instead, it has become a reminder of exactly why the group stage exists in the first place. Not to confirm what everyone already expected, but to occasionally tear it apart completely. The United States have been the best story in this group so far. Australia have been the most surprising. And Turkey, for all their talent, are one bad night away from a World Cup that ends far sooner than anyone in Istanbul wanted to imagine. Tonight decides which version of this story we're telling by tomorrow morning. 2 matches, 4 teams, and a group that has already torn up every expectation it walked in with. See you in the next one.